testing and have now become world beaters in that regard with the assistance of the Doctors Hospital, and there can be no doubt about that.
Okay, thank you. So, and just to wrap up, so you would say that our quality of performance is fairly high, or quite high when compared to the rest of the world.
Certainly in regards to testing, but also I think I'm been very impressed with the collaboration that's happened, not just at the Health Services Authority, but between the Health Services Authority and the rest of the medical community. That's I don't know enough about the history to say that that is a really positive move in the right direction. And I've been incredibly pleased to see the joint working, which has produced results such as the joint clinical guidelines on the management of COVID-19 disease and the joint clinical panel that came and presented to you. We share this information all the while between the different hospitals and the private GPs and so on. I don't think I could have really asked for a better working parameters in order to tackle this threat.
Thank you very much, Dr. That's it for Dr. Lee.
Okay, we go now to Kayla at the Compass. Questions for Dr. Lee.
Hi, Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon.
As you anticipated, I have questions about antibody testing today. So we saw that, as you mentioned, HSA started testing this morning. There's also an antibody machine at Health City. Do we know when testing will start with that machine and what the timeline is there?
I'm sorry we don't have a representative from there, but I know they're good to go. They have the permission to go. They could have started, and it's very imminent. Kind of, it's possibly started already.
Great. And you mentioned that there's a distinction between types of antibody tests. What type is being used at HSA?
Health Services Authority has an Abbott machine, and the one at Health City is a Roche machine.
Okay. And what's the distinction between those types of machines?
All of the different manufacturers provide slightly different reagents in order to detect things. So as I mentioned, whether the parts of the antibody response to the virus, they're all slightly different depending on the different manufacturers.
Okay. And say that an individual gets an antibody test and they test positive for COVID-19 antibodies. Should they take that as an indication of some level of immunity, or is that something that is still unproven?
It is, I mean, a lot of people are saying it is likely to, a lot of doctors are saying it's likely to be an element of immunity. It's not, we are not seeing a huge number of reinfection from SARS-CoV. So we know that it's rampant in some countries, but we're not seeing a lot of people presenting again and again. We would do if there was no immunity from it. However, how long that immunity lasts and whether a positive IgG test means that you're immune or not, those sort of very basic questions we don't know the answer to. So we don't feel that it can be used securely to say, if you've had it, you know, you can enter a ward full of patients without any protection. We would never do something like that or recommend something like that.
Okay. And
I think that sort of explains the difficulty of trying to develop vaccines too, because you have to answer all of these questions, and it's not a straightforward process.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some countries exploring the possibility of an immunity passport, but it sounds like that's something that we can't rely on at this point.
Correct.
And I wanted to also touch on plasma treatments for COVID-19. Do these antibody testing machines enable us to be able to explore that avenue of treatment should it become necessary?
Yes, it does. I mean, you need to determine that somebody has raised antibodies, otherwise using, and one of the tests in particular demonstrates it's recommending that if you reach a certain antibody level that you can detect that person's plasma would be good use want of a better phrase, to help treat somebody with COVID-19 disease. So yes, that area is being explored, and again, the more information will come out. But yes.
Okay, thank you, doctor. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Dr. Lee, Wendy at CNS has a few questions for you. Wendy, please go ahead.
Thanks, Donna. Actually, Dr. Lee, I only have one. It's just to follow up really on something the Premier said last week about circling back to retest frontline workers and essential workers. Will we still be sticking to the numbers that you give us, or the numbers that are released publicly, as being individual people, and that we won't be counting people who are retested?
No, you're seeing some people that are retested. You're not seeing, for example, you wouldn't, if somebody was being retested for who had been positive, and they're being retested on as an exit from, being released from lockdown, you won't see those figures. But if they're being retested for a new reason, you will see those figures. So within those figures of 20,323, there are some people, and that's a lot of them will be healthcare workers who've been tested more than once.
Okay, so
each time we test them, we're testing them for a new reason. We're testing them to see if they're positive on that occasion. So you couldn't divide 65. You couldn't put 20,323 over 65,000 and say we have tested that amount of the population categorically,
right,
because some of those are doubles, yes, or trebles or quadruples.
Okay, so is there any figures in that case of the actual percentage of the population of Grand Cayman that's now been tested? Given that that's no longer a people figure.
That can be determined from the Access database, but there are limits to how much manipulation of the data I'm able to provide, because we just are somewhat limited in our capacity for answering some of these questions.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy. Dr. Lee, thank you very much. I'd like to now call on Commissioner Derek Byrne.
Good afternoon. I'm primarily dealing today with the removal of the hard curfew, but earlier this week, the Premier announced a significant easing of shelter-in-place regulations commencing this Sunday, the 21st of June, with further easing of restrictions on Sunday, the 5th of July, and easing again on Sunday, the 19th of July. And all of these new regulations will be gazetted this evening. Following this announcement, the National Hazard Management Executive Committee and Cabinet approved the revocation of the imposition of curfew order or hard curfew which is in place, and decided that the hard curfew order will be revoked with effect from 4:30 a.m. this Sunday morning, the 21st of June. I have now received permission from His Excellency the Governor to revoke the imposition of curfew order from 4:30 a.m. this coming Sunday. This means that the imposition of curfew order in place will run tonight, Friday, tomorrow night, Saturday, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. and will end on Sunday morning at 4:30 a.m., following which there will be no imposition of curfew order or hard curfew order in place across the Cayman Islands. It will be useful to advise that the new regulations to be gazetted this evening will be accompanied by additional new regulations approved by Cabinet, introducing 23 new ticketable offences for breaches of the regulations, with fines ranging from 250 Cayman dollars to 750 Cayman dollars. And the new regulations dealing with the ticketable offences will also be gazetted later this evening. And taking from the announcement made by the Premier earlier in the week, the significant regulations that remain in place relate to social distancing, public gatherings, no inter-island travelling on boat for pleasure between the islands, and some easing of restrictions as we move forward to the 5th of July and the 19th of July. But all is contained in the new regulations. At this point, I would like to take the opportunity to say a huge thank you to all of the communities across the Cayman Islands for their tolerance, compromise, support and cooperation shown to the RCIPS and our partner law enforcement agencies over the past 3 months or so, as we went about our business dealing with shelter-in-place regulations and the enforcement of the hard curfew. My sense is that we were in this together, we held firm, and the results have been outstanding. Just a brief note on crime. The crime and security situation remains very calm and very stable. I did release 2 crime reports over the past 2 weeks, which have been uploaded to our website and are available for viewing. And over the past 3 weeks, we did have 2 drug canoes enter the islands. A significant amount of ganja was recovered along with 2 firearms. 3 persons were arrested and charged with drug-related crimes. And to speak about traffic, as I've spoken before, speeding continues to be a major concern. And for the period of 29th of May to the 19th of June 2020, 532 speeding tickets have been issued. The frequency of excess speeding is most notable at Easterly Tibbetts Highway, Shamrock Road, and along South Sound Road. We have had 2 serious accidents during this period. We have partnered with the Rotary Club to launch a road safety campaign titled Slow Down. It's a slow down campaign with the focus on educating drivers on the effects of speeding and the impacts on families who have to deal with the loss of loved ones and serious injuries to members of their families. We are seeing an increase in drivers driving under the influence of alcohol at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Byrne, yes, we do have a question from Kayla at the Compass. Kayla, please go ahead.
Hi, Commissioner. I wanted to touch on the recent reports, crime stats that were released. And we didn't see that domestic violence was listed as a category in the report. Was it categorized differently, or will we receive more information with regards to that category?
Yes, we will definitely see more information. I had undertaken to release a separate report, and the complexity of it is you have domestic incidents and domestic violence incidents, and they span a range of incidents which are much wider than just domestic violence. I did lose a key member of team who went off island in the last 2 weeks or so I'm slightly delayed, and I would hope in the next week or 2 to have a full 5-month report uploaded to the webpage.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's my only question.
Commissioner Byrne. We're going to go now to our panel, beginning with the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Donna. Hello, everyone. I'm afraid I have quite a bit to say today, but it's all good stuff. First, I want to thank the Commissioner for appearing today. Probably one of his last appearances here, at least in the capacity of dealing with COVID-19 issues. I want to thank him and his team for the incredible work, incredible job they've done over the course of this most difficult period. There's no guidebook for dealing with a global pandemic. Like all other governments around the world, the Cayman Islands government had to quickly make decisions and tough choices to protect our population from COVID-19. At the end of March, the country took an aggressive approach to stop the virus in its tracks by implementing regulations that limited human interactions and movement. This was achieved through what has come to be called a soft and hard curfew. To most of us, the past 3 months probably seemed like an eternity. During the restrictions, we had to make provisions for allowing exceptions in essential services to continue. This is where a special team came into the picture to determine who qualified for an exemption under the regulations. This special team was referred to in the public health regulations as the competent authority. This team, also known as the curfew time team, was led by Chief Officer Eric Bush, and the country owes them a great debt of gratitude. During the shelter-in-place regulations, which began at the end of March, curfew time was introduced to facilitate essential businesses. It also helped to navigate circumstances that were not specifically spelled out by the regulations. There was also no guidebook for curfew time. Faced with a hugely challenging situation, the curfew time team handled it with efficiency, grace, and ingenuity. The team grew from 2 to 12 people in the space of a week, working through 16-hour days and initially 7 days a week to handle the volume of requests sent to the curfew time email inbox. With full dedication, Curfew Time ensured that essential businesses could operate in these unusual circumstances. Every day, the team answered questions from businesses and the public about the regulations. Curfew Time also worked to ensure that various sectors, ranging from farmers to IT specialists, could continue to operate, that blood donations could continue, and that elderly and otherwise vulnerable individuals were cared for. It worked to ensure business continuity and to enable weddings and funerals to take place, albeit with significant restrictions. The success of Curfew Time, combined with our countrywide testing that revealed the extent of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands, has meant that we could undertake a phased reopening of the Cayman Islands economy, as well as the reopening of Little Cayman and Cayman Brac ahead of Grand Cayman. Each new phase brought changes and challenges, and these challenges actually made businesses adapt and innovate in order to continue to offer their goods and services. Over the last few months, the volume of requests grew and grew from hundreds to thousands. By the end of April, after 5 weeks of operation, the Curfew Time team had received approximately 12,000 email requests. A single exemption request could involve multiple emails back and forth seeking relevant information. This volume led the team to seek technological assistance. The off-reg, ICT, and Curfew Time teams worked together and designed an online form and an automated workflow process to help streamline, simplify, and automate requests, which greatly reduced the workload on the Curfew Time team and increased the efficiency of the entire process. The success of the online form once again showed the agility, capability, and talent that lies within the Cayman Islands Civil Service. As of today, June 19th, 2020, over 19,000 requests were processed by the Curfew Time team, 4,300 of which were via the automated online form. I am confident and delighted that government's decisions, strategy, and the sacrifice of so many have paid off. On Sunday, we will be lifting the vast majority of the restrictions that were required to get us to this point. We have avoided the tragedy that has played out in so many other countries, but we need to remain vigilant. Now that all curfews, hard and soft, and with it, Curfew Time, come to an end, I hope everyone will join me in commending the Curfew Time team for the vital role they have played in our country's immensely successful strategy to prevent, suppress, and control the spread of COVID-19 across these beloved Cayman Islands. They have done an amazing job. The team members, in alphabetical order: Andrea Famo, Ashlyn Gubalt Ebanks, Ivana Martinez, Kendra Okonski, Shanique Seals, Shushan O'Connor, Stacey Sibersma, Tashina Rickfield, Christika Ebanks. And we had 4 volunteers: Felicia Paddyfoot, Delia Hides, Althea Edwards Booth, and Joanna Bond, all led by the fearless and peerless Eric Bush. This week, our community celebrates major strides to contain and suppress the spread of the COVID-19 virus locally. As we prepare to enter level 2, light suppression, and to regain the ability to socialize more freely, it is important to pause and recognize the tremendous efforts of those who served on the front line to make this milestone possible. As Premier, I want to take this opportunity to publicly acknowledge the men and women within the public service who have toiled relentlessly to carry out the government's policy decisions and to faithfully serve the people of the Cayman Islands. It is due in large part to their courage and professionalism, that it has been possible to maintain stated progress in the fight against COVID-19 and indeed to reach this particular point today. Just over 3 months ago, as the pandemic swept towards our shores, we called upon the men and women within our public service to see these islands through this crisis, which is of unrivaled magnitude in the history of these islands. They mobilized swiftly to activate our emergency operations and implement government's policies to slow the spread of the deadly virus. Even when very little was known about the virus and how it spread, Customs and Border Control officers welcomed thousands of returning residents and bid farewell to guests. As one group stepped up and did their jobs, other teams mobilized to address the next string of challenges as large numbers of students and residents began flocking home to take refuge. And anxieties arose within the community that this might hasten the spread of the virus locally. Teams gathered and within 24 hours went through iterations of innovative solutions. The result allowed us to temporarily transform hotels into isolation facilities, thereby relieving the pressures on families who were receiving loved ones from abroad, and allowing public health to focus their monitoring and testing capabilities to highly centralized locations. Where the virus had breached our borders and was silently threatening to replicate itself in every district across our community, diverse public health professionals joined forces with the HSA and began the laborious process of contact tracing, which has to date resulted in the daily monitoring of almost 200 COVID positive persons, contact tracing for hundreds more who were potentially exposed, and raised the alert for those persons who were either unable or unwilling to maintain the quarantine. Elsewhere, teams who had never previously worked together volunteered in Operation Bring 'em Home and met our citizens at the airports and cared for at least 2 weeks at a time at the isolation facilities, and cared for them for at least 2 weeks at a time at the isolation facilities. These volunteers worked in shifts, sometimes through the night, to feed, clean, and support the welfare of more than 600 residents who passed through these facilities in the first 3 months. The needs of each occupant were known and addressed, ably led by the professionals from the Department of Children and Family Services, who are well versed in the procedures of shelter management. We give thanks to Almighty God for sparing us the full brunt of the virus, as many COVID positive cases were asymptomatic. However, we must not forget that there were those among us whose symptoms required medical interventions, either in the form of outpatient treatment in the newly formed flu clinic or by full-blown admission to the dedicated respiratory unit. The HSA quickly transformed their normal operations to combat COVID-19, including the addition of a dedicated flu hotline to identify symptoms which warranted closer scrutiny. With the assistance of project management and supply chain experts, satellite medical facilities were established, thereby expanding our capabilities if the volume of persons becoming ill should require Cayman to increase its medical footprint. These wins were made by working closely with civil society from our church community and voluntary organizations. When images from abroad flooded our shores of medical professionals combating COVID without even the basic protective gear necessary to keep them safe, the Cabinet took comfort in the daily reports received through the crisis of how locally PPE inventories were being managed and were being regularly augmented even at the height of the crisis. When global supplies were at critically low levels and countries were confiscating medical equipment and transiting their ports, local teams worked throughout the days and nights to secure adequate supplies, not only to protect our doctors and nurses on the front line, but equally to distribute more than 50,000 disposable and reusable masks across all 3 islands, so that every resident had some basic equipment needed to protect themselves and each other as they experienced larger groups in public places. Every medical and scientific expert has said the key to combating COVID, particularly when it presents as an invisible asymptomatic intruder, is testing, testing, testing. HSA's public health teams joined more recently by medical professionals from our private sector, have undertaken more than 20,000 COVID screenings, almost one-third of our population. The Cayman Islands now ranks third, soon to be second, in the world for testing per capita and is currently expanding capabilities to also conduct antibody testing. Our police officers adopted extended shifts to enforce curfews by night, maintain the peace by day, to instill confidence that essential activities like grocery shopping could be safely and pragmatically managed. Police officers joined side by side by CBC officers and volunteer special constables, interacted with hundreds and sometimes thousands of persons each day. Some of these interactions came at great personal risk when, for example, they were called upon to assist public health teams with breaches in COVID quarantines. They did not have the luxury of an established schedule for responding to COVID emergencies, but rather made themselves available as required to keep the public safe. Whilst contending with unprecedented demands for their services, some of the men and women on the front line have also had to make a difficult call to isolate away from their families. By reducing the risk of accidental transmission to their own households, they maintained a singular focus to holding the front line and keeping Cayman safe. I should say that a number of police officers, as well as other civil servants, have themselves been the victim of COVID-19. Thankfully, no one became really ill. Our communications teams worked tirelessly to inform the public of the latest medical and policy advice, to reach the public in their preferred communication channel, from daily press briefings to continuous social media feeds, and to speak to each segment of our population in their own voice, enlisting the cooperation of all, from young children to our elderly. They also battled and quickly addressed rumors which disseminated false and harmful news, and instead offered the public reliable sources of medical and scientific advice. The National Emergency Operations Center, which has been operational for over 100 days, will cease daily activities today and shift to monitoring and maintaining readiness for rapid response as required. Many on the front line have gone without leave during the height of this crisis, responding to calls all hours of the day and night. As I said before, the public service has itself not been immune to virus, and some of the team contracting the virus and facing the uphill process of quarantine and recovery. Yet, as soon as circumstances allowed, they resumed their posts, driven by the shared purpose to make lives better. Although COVID-19 has dominated our discussions and decisions for over 100 days, it is not the only crisis our country has faced this year. Since January of this year, the public service has responded to a major earthquake and tsunami warning and a major landfill fire as well. And on the 1st of June, we saw the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, and we know not what that will bring. While we have so far been able to navigate these calamities by instituting sound policies, making swift decisions, and enacting laws and regulations, all of those measures would have been for nothing had it not been for the consistent and unwavering service provided by our frontline workers, who implemented the government's policies, decisions, and regulations, and saved lives by doing so. These are the capable men and women that we have relied on to ensure a successful response to COVID thus far, and the people we will continue to rely on for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic and the hurricane season. Having provided a glimpse of the heroic efforts of our COVID-19 responders, the government would like to recognize the remarkable effort by making a one-time honorarium payment for those who have borne the brunt of the COVID response. Those public servants who helped to combat COVID-19 by delivering essential services during the height of the crisis will receive a one-off payment of $1,000. An additional payment of $500 will be made to those whose work in combating the spread of the virus required them to work in the most hazardous conditions, including frequent contacts with high volumes of persons or close contact with persons known or suspected to be COVID positive. My cabinet was happy to approve the one-off payment of an honorarium for COVID responders within the public service. We only wish it could have been more. This stipend will be paid by participating agencies and within the civil service. It will be borne from pre-existing HR budgets and savings realized in personnel costs across the civil service. There will be no increase in the overall civil service budget. The Deputy Governor and Chief Officers will manage the program, and I wish to again extend my sincere appreciation and that of my government, and indeed the people of these islands, for the tireless efforts of the teams who have responded. We have seen countries much larger than ours, with far more resources than ours, far more expertise than ours, struggle to mobilize an effective response. I would remind our emergency responders, though, and everyone else for that matter, we are not yet out of the woods, and we will continue to rely upon our civil servants to continue to keep these islands safe. Again, I would like to thank those on the front line of our COVID-19 response for all of your remarkable and tireless efforts. You are indeed heroes. As we enter level 2, light suppression, we remain grateful for the contributions of so many who have made this point and this day possible.
Thank you very much, Premier McLaughlin. Your Excellency.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Donna. So a huge number of test results today, and John Lee has just asked me to add a few more. We were talking in the lift before we came in that we weren't quite at 1,000. Well, as he's performed throughout this crisis, he's managed to achieve it because he's asked me to say there are an extra 47 negative results, which takes the day's total to 1,034. So I think we can all, that is a huge number of tests, and really good news that we only have 2 positives in the last few days. Also really pleased to see the very sort of positive reaction to the latest announcement of the relaxation of measures. I think the hairdressers and barbers announcement has probably been the most popular, judging by my inbox. I think what I want to sort of say principally today is that I think we can be really proud in our islands that we've effectively created a safe bubble, and probably one of the safest places to be in the world just now. If you look across to the US, Miami is being described as the next epicenter of COVID in the US, and they've had some large numbers of cases there, but we don't have that here. We have created a very safe bubble. And the UK military assistance team, which is here, has described to me that they believe the government and public health response has been evidence-based, credible, and exceptionally well led. And I think we can take pride in that. And I do want to say a huge thank you again to everyone across the islands for their cooperation and helping us get to this point. And as we've sort of repeated in our sort of new normal world, we please have to keep going with social distancing, the basic hygiene, good respiratory behaviors when coughing and sneezing, and wearing masks in public places. As we seek to sort of tackle the next challenge of opening the border, we need to get into these good habits now and have discipline in those habits, because these good habits will be those that keep us individually safe from this virus, but also protect our community. Let me also add my very positive welcome for the honorarium for frontline workers. I'm really pleased to see this. I think it's absolutely right that we recognise the hard work of so many people on our islands on the front line. And let me say again as well to the Police Commissioner, thank you particularly to all of your police officers, the CBC people who've helped you, and the Special Constables, because we really do owe you a particular debt of gratitude. On BA evacuation flights, I have a couple of announcements to make. So first of all, the flight to Chennai, India will go on sale on Monday. Those who have registered with the travel helpline will be sent details of how to book before the flight is later opened up to others. And a reminder that this flight is for people traveling to India, and passengers must hold an Indian passport or a valid overseas citizen of India card in order to book a seat. So again, no need to contact my office on this flight. Details will be shared with the individuals on Monday. I also want to just add that we are working very hard to try and find a solution for the Nepalese citizens who have approached us wanting to depart. We are making some progress and we'll share details just as soon as we can. I'm also pleased to announce today that we are planning to run British Airways flights to the UK on the 31st of July and the 28th of August. These flights will primarily be for students who are going to the UK to attend school and university. And again, there's no need to ring in and contact my office about those flights because just register on the helpline if you have not done so already. I've also been asked to point out that there is a flight on the 24th of June to Cancun from Grand Cayman. That's taking back Peruvian and Mexican nationals on Wednesday, the 24th of June at 7 a.m. This has been organized by a private individual, and details will be on my social media pages later. And finally today, I just want to brief you all that we've agreed to a request by the US Customs and Border Protection to station an aircraft here next week. Now, we wouldn't normally announce this, but because of COVID-19, we think it's important to reassure the public. So this aircraft will be conducting surveillance and doing counter-narcotics and security work in the region, working with our own ICIPS Air Operations Unit. And we will be fully managing the COVID risk, and the crew will simply go from the airport to their hotel or will be tested before arrival. So the COVID risk is being managed. But this is a very strong signal of our cooperation with the US on security, and they're one of our key partners. So we're very pleased to be able to agree to that US request. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Donna, and good afternoon, everyone. Upper Father's Day weekend. Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, and our Caymanian diaspora listening. We heard Premier's overview, and I just want to add my thanks to Commissioner, to the police, volunteers, CBC staff, the Deputy Governor, Attorney General, Danielle, Hazard Management, CMO Dr. Lee, GIS staff, the press, the listeners. Also want to thank our host, Donna, for putting up with us. Also want to thank the Civil Service support staff, the Health Ministry, the Acting Chief Officer, last but not least, the leader of our country, my friend, Premier. And thank you all very much. As Premier said, no one could plan for what came upon the whole world, and we handled it so well, and now is admired by most. In my utmost respect for all fathers who stand committed to their responsibilities, but more so to the men and mothers who have played dual roles and still produce contributing citizens of this country. In May, we had Mother's Day, and most were restricted and could not visit their mothers physically because of the COVID-19. In no disrespect to any father, I personally ask if you have mothers living on this Father's Day who played a critical role in your upbringing to call or visit them and give them a great big Father's Day hug. Scripture reading for today is Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. The man became a living creature. The nation's first Father's Day was celebrated some 110 years to date on June 19th, 1910, in the state of Washington. However, it was not until 1972, 58 years after President Woodrow Wilson made Mother's Day official, that the day honoring Father's Day became a nationwide holiday in the United States. Let me give you a bit of history on this. The campaign to celebrate the nation's fathers did not meet with the same enthusiasm, perhaps because, as one florist explained, fathers haven't the same sentimental appeal that mothers have. On July 5th, 1908, a West Virginian church sponsored the nation's first event explicitly in the honor of fathers, a Sunday sermon in memory of the 362 men who had died in the previous December's explosion at the Fairmont Coal Company mines in Monaga. But it was a one-time commemoration and not an annual holiday. The next year, a Spokane, Washington woman named Sonora Smart Dodd, one of 6 children raised by a widower, tried to establish an official equivalent to Mother's Day for male parents. She went to the local churches, the YMCA, shopkeepers, and government officials to drum up support for her idea, and she was successful. Washington State celebrated the nation's first statewide Father's Day on June 19th, 1910. Slowly, the holiday spread. In 1916, President Wilson honored the day by using telegraph signals to unfurl a flag in Spokane when he pressed a button in Washington, D.C. In 1924, President Calvin Coolidge urged state governments to observe Father's Day. Today, the day honoring fathers is celebrated in the United States on the 3rd Sunday of June. In other countries, especially in Europe and Latin America, fathers are honored on St. Joseph's Day, a traditional Catholic holiday that falls on March 19th. The celebration in the United Kingdom are thought to have been inspired by the American custom of Father's Day. This is in contrast to Mother's Day, which has a very different history in the United States and the United Kingdom. Many men, however, continue to disdain the day. As one historian writes, they scoffed at the holiday's sentimental attempts to domesticate manliness with flowers and gift-giving, or they derided the proliferation of such holidays as a commercial gimmick to sell more products, often paid for by the father himself. During the 1920s and 30s, a movement arose to scrap Mother's Day and Father's Day altogether in favor of a single holiday, Parents' Day. Every year on Mother's Day, a pro-parent days group rallied in New York City. Central Park, a public reminder, said Parents' Day activist and radio performer Robert Spear, that both parents should be loved and respected together. Paradoxically, however, the Great Depression derailed this effort to combine and decommercialize holidays. Struggling retailers and advertisers redoubled their effort to make Father's Day a second Christmas for men, promoting goods such as neckties, hats, socks, pipes, and tobacco, golf clubs, and other sporting goods and greeting cards. When World War II began, advertisers began to argue that celebrating Father's Day was a way to honor troops and support the war effort. By the end of the war, Father's Day may not have been a federal holiday, but it was a national institution. In 1972, in the middle of a hard-fought presidential re-election, Richard Nixon signed a proclamation making Father's Day a federal holiday at last. Today, economists estimate that Americans spend more than $1 billion each year on Father's Day gifts. Premier, you may be fond of this. A Mr. Harry C. Meek, member of the Lions Club International, claimed that he had the first idea of Father's Day in 1915. Meek claimed that the 3rd Sunday of June was chosen because it was his birthday. it would have been more natural to choose his father's birthday. The Lions Club has named him originator of Father's Day. Meek made many efforts to promote Father's Day and make it an official holiday. Today's shout out goes to civil servant Luciano Lazari. Happy birthday to you. Also, young Isaiah Allen, congrats on your graduation. CIFA, the Cayman Islands Football Association, and the National Cayman Islands football teams, they heard the call from us and they're going to donate blood to the blood bank. Also, all coaches and committee members and parents are being asked to join them. Thank you, President Whitaker, for that. Also, I wanted to note that for the avoidance of doubt, for additional guidance around child care, summer camps, vacation Bible schools, and the reopening of churches, and also the framework for restarting sports on July 19th, please go to the government website on exploregov.ky/coronavirus. exploregov.ky/coronavirus. It's very important to persons who are seeking additional information in those areas. A lot of people calling and asking. I think it would be good if everyone could go on there. On various radio stations at 6:59 p.m. each evening, listeners have heard a short tribute to frontline workers, followed by the sound of conch shells being blown by Mr. Ray Banker and Mr. Deal Ebanks. As many of our older folks would know, conch shell horns have a distinctive sound and were frequently used in days gone by to get the public's attention or to make important announcements. During this COVID-19 pandemic, that tradition is being revived in a new way and for a noble purpose. I'm pleased to announce that the Cayman Islands government is offering a series of ringtones for mobile phones, which features the sound of the conch shell against a musical background, and which the public can download for free and put on their phones as a show of support to frontline and essential workers. Most people have a cell phone, and we all know someone on the front lines, whether a family member, a friend, or a neighbor, that deserves to be acknowledged for the great job they've been doing in these unusual and trying times. Downloading a ringtone is a fast, easy, and effective way to give them your support and thank all essential workers for the huge sacrifices they continue to make to keep us all safe during COVID-19. The ringtones were created from the sound of conch shells being blown by Ray Banker and Dee Lee Banks and were musically produced by local musician Benil Miller. These ringtones are unique to Cayman and are authentic and entertaining. There are 3 toe-tapping melodies to choose from, one in soca, one in pop, and one in trap music, which I understand is currently popular with young people. Whichever style you happen to prefer, I encourage you to pick up your favorite tune and save it to your cell phone. The ringtones are entirely free to the public and can be downloaded from the coronavirus website at www.gov.ky/coronavirus. And to give you an idea of what they sound like, let's take a listen to one of them. Isn't that great? With these ringtones being for such a worthy cause, I hope to see thousands of downloads, sending the strongest message of acknowledgement and support to the frontline and essential staff. Although frontline and essential workers have been at the forefront of government's containment policies, we shouldn't forget that their efforts have been supplemented by the public sheltering in place these past months. With this in mind, it is fair to say that these ringtones also signify that as a community, we are all in this together. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Radio Cayman, DMS Broadcasting, Early's Media, Big Fish, and Star 92.7 radio stations for their partnership in bringing Conch Shell Calls salute to the public. I also extend my sincere thanks to Ray Banker and D. Lee Banks and Benil Miller for their collaboration in making ringtones possible for the public to enjoy and download. While our country slowly reopens, I hope this initiative will help to lift spirits in our communities in a fun way and help us all to feel more closely connected during these challenging times. And for the younger ones among us, we will also be running a video dance contest. So I encourage our youth to start practicing your best dance moves and listen out for more details in a future press briefing. Also wanted to, I forgot to mention public health. How could I? And Dr. Rodriguez, needed to thank them also for all the hard work they have done throughout this COVID-19 season as we reopen. I thank you all for all the work that you all done. Thank you and God bless. Team press conference signing out.
All right, thank you, Minister. Yes, Premier
If
McLaughlin.
I might, I have one more announcement, which is
Yes, sir.
sent to me, which I know a lot of people will be happy to hear about. We are finalizing the details of evacuation flights to the U.S. planned for July and August. The Ministry of Employment and Border Control reminds students and parents heading to school in the U.S. this fall to register online via www.explore.gov.ky/travel if they have not yet done so. Persons who have registered already will be contacted directly about flight availability and seating as soon as details are finalized.
Okay, thank you very much, Premier McLaughlin. Thank you to the panel. We're going to go now to the Acting Director of Work, Mr. Jeremy Scott. Mr. Scott?
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will be providing information on the Jobs Cayman portal and the recent changes made in law relative to work permit applications in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Last year, Work launched the Jobs Cayman portal. Since then, a total of 1,355 job seekers have registered as of the 1st of June, with an average of 271 registering each month. Out of this total, 83% are Caymanians, with the remainder consisting of individuals who are married to Caymanians and permanent residents who have the right to work. Of these registered job seekers, 68% identified themselves as being unemployed. To date, a total of 1,097 employers have also registered on the portal and successfully advertised 1,697 jobs, or an average of 339 jobs per month. Legislation to ensure Caymanians are considered first for positions has been in place for some time, but recent changes have enhanced this further. From the 1st of May, employers are now required to advertise applications on Jobs Cayman for 14 consecutive days before they are able to apply for a work permit. This replaces the previous requirement to advertise positions in a newspaper. With this change, Jobs Cayman has been established as a primary hub where most, if not all, jobs will be available to see and be applied for online. Jobs Cayman bolsters our support for Caymanians and enables them to directly refer or have assistance from Work's employment service officers. Once they apply for or are referred, registered Caymanian job seekers are assured that their applications will be seen and reviewed by the relevant authority should the employer decide to apply for a work permit. Turning now to the additional measures we have put in place following the unprecedented closure of work offices as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We understand and appreciate that this has caused some challenges for our customers, but want to be clear about the support and flexibility we have put in place to ease this. Within the first month of government closures, Work rolled out our remote operations to the public. This began with facilities and services to support a group of application types and registrations to Jobs Cayman. All application types are now fully available via electronic submission and electronic funds transfer. Our website, worc.ky, provides guidance to accessing electronic services, and our customer care team are willing to answer questions via our call center number 945-9672 or via email worc@gov.ky. While boards were closed, staff from our customer care team, work administration teams, and supporting staff who were deployed from other sections assisted in ensuring that a total of 3,577 work permit applications were successfully processed remotely. As a result, very limited volume of applications remain to date. I'm also happy to announce that all of our boards have now reconvened meetings. Additionally, plans are underway to roll out services at our headquarters located at 87 Mary Street, known as Apollo West Building, in the coming weeks, details of which will be announced shortly. Finally, for those who were unable to access our services while our offices were closed, I wish to clarify the provisions that have been made which will apply to you. If someone's work permit expired on or after the 27th of March and the employer was unable to apply for a renewal, we want to be clear that the worker would not be committing an offense by continuing to work on the same terms and conditions of the expired work permit, as long as the employer makes an application for the work permit renewal by the 30th of June. This period has been extended from the original date of the 31st of May, following consultation with private sector stakeholders. If expired work permits are not renewed in accordance with new provisions outlined by the 30th of June, employees who continue to work will be in breach of the law, and both the employer and employee will be liable to fines of $5,000 or to imprisonment for 1 year or both. Where a worker's final work permit of 9 years has expired and an employer was unable to submit a renewal of the work permit after the 27th of March, the worker is able to continue to work under their existing conditions until the 1st of August, 2020. Employers are not required to complete an application or pay a fee to utilize this permission in law. Understanding that there exist at times barriers to matching job seekers to jobs based on a variety of factors, the department is continuing to assist via programs and partnerships with industry stakeholders. If permitted, I will ask Diane to provide an overview of these programs and opportunities that Caymanians would find beneficial in search of employment.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'll start with our Ready to Work program that has been relaunched. We've had quite a response in this last week. We've had over 130 participants inquiring about the program. To date, we have got 20 submissions. 10 businesses have expressed their interest in participating as well. Just an overview again, this is a program that is geared towards Caymanians 17 years and older. It is a 2-week employability 101 training, followed by a 6-month placement at a business. Some of the areas that enrollees have expressed an interest in are accounting, administration, architecture, banking, clerical, construction, computer service, data entry or filing, driver, HR, receptionist or secretarial, and sales. So if you have a business there and you're interested in signing up or hiring a Caymanian, do get in touch with us and we can provide you with an expression of interest form. We also invited any other job seekers who are seeking to apply for them to reach out to us and complete an expression of interest form as well. That email is readytowork@gov.ky, or they can call Diane Connolly at 925-7230. For those facilitators who have submitted or are submitting a request for supplier qualifications, that deadline has now been extended to the 26th of June. So that's any facilitators that are interested in supporting us in the training that we are providing. We welcome you to get in touch with us as well. We're looking to have the trainings calendar ready by the 13th of July. As for the Passport to Success program, which many of you should be familiar with, this is a program that we're trying to work very closely with private sector and increase opportunities for work-based training programs for those under the age of 25. So that program, we actually have one cohort starting on Monday. That's cohort 31. That will be done via Zoom. That 20 participants will be participating in that. So that was a very good number. The next cohort, number 32, we plan to start in October. That will be geared towards those who are 15 to 17 years old. Those are persons who might be recent graduates that are seeking to get into the workforce. That has a deadline for applications for the 24th of July, 2020. For those interested in signing up for that program, they can email work.training@gov.ky or call 925-5827. That's 925-5827. Lastly, I'm just going to touch base on a few upcoming training programs that we either putting on now or will in the future. Right now, we're working with Inspire Cayman for those interested in learning a little bit more about the core skills for employment in the trades. And this includes recognized industry certification. We have a partnership with Marriott that we're seeking to introduce in the near future, which will be specifically for Caymanians seeking employment in tourism and hospitality. And we'll have a focus on front office, front desk. We have partnerships coming up with Wine School 3 for those interested in doing the Shaker International Bartending Certification. So we really want to thank our partners out there. TVET, some TVET training will also become available through UCCI. And we're also looking at the GED in partnership with ICCI. So quite a bit of training planned for the near future. Again, anyone who's interested in either offering training or attending this training, we would invite you to reach out to us at work.training@gov.ky.
Okay, thank you very much, Diane, and to Mr. Jeremy Scott. We're going to go now to the media for questions for work officials as well as for the panel. We're going to begin with Wendy from CNS. Wendy, please go ahead with your questions.
Thank you, Donna. Most of my questions are for the work representatives, but I just have a very quick one for the governor actually on the panel. I was just wondering whether he could just go over again the details of the US plane that's coming in and how exactly we are going to be protected from or how exactly the community is going to be protected when it comes to the COVID risk, given especially that they're coming from the United States. So can you just go over that and give the public some reassurance?
Yeah, of course, Wendy. I think I did say it, but let me repeat it again. So we've agreed that they can only travel from the airport to their hotel, a bit like we do with the BA crew when they stay overnight. So they're here for about 5 days, and they will only go from the airport to their hotel, and it will be using one of the government facilities that is isolating people. So there is absolutely no risk, and they will all have been tested before they arrive. So we've made that a condition. And so I'm satisfied that we are fully managing the COVID risk, and this is a really important relationship, and we're a really significant security objectives that are being met through this operation. Stunned you into silence.
Wendy, are you there? Wendy, are you there?
Oh, I must have. Sorry about that. I must have knocked the mute button by mistake. I was talking ever such a lot, and you all missed it.
Okay, please repeat your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with the governor again. So the plane will land. The crews, the American the soldiers or whatever will go to the hotel. But what will they be doing for those 5 days? Will they be shuttling back and forth and then doing work here in Cayman?
Yeah, no, it's a surveillance aircraft, so they will be flying above the region.
Right. Okay. I understand. Thank you very much.
And
for
it's
that. Okay.
happened before, Wendy. This is not the first
Yeah.
time. We're announcing it because obviously we're aware that people will want reassurance that the
Yeah,
correct
they'll
measures
see
are
the
being
aircraft landed. Right. Okay. I get that. Now, Don, if I may, all my questions are for work people, probably Mrs. Scott or Mrs. Connolly.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
The first question I think is going to be for Mrs. Scott. Mrs. Scott, can you say if there have been any exemptions given to bosses since we introduced the new law that requires people to go via the portal to advertise their jobs? Has anybody been given an exemption to that and allowed to just go straight to work permit?
Hi, Wendy. Yes, I can actually answer that. There has been a couple cases that have come across. The background to that is that those exemptions are for specific professionals that, again, one of the key factors to consider when looking at waivers was whether or not there's any local label that would in fact be able to fill those voids. But we were speaking of persons within the financial sectors and persons who hold high professional degrees, that definitely there would not have been an undermining of local labor.
Okay, so and you it's roughly how many? 2, 3, 4?
I don't have the exact number, but what I can say at this point in time, it's about 2 to 4.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Also, another question. This is one that's come up a lot amongst the public, and I kind of understand why. Is it possible for us all to access all of the jobs without actually having to register as either a job seeker or an employer? Is it possible to see all of the jobs that are now available without doing that? Is there a way in?
Yeah, so Wendy, as far as I understand, there has to be registration. I do know that there was a back and forth as to whether or not there was a capability to view jobs without registration. But as far as I know at this point, registration would be required. But I can actually verify that and communicate further with you.
Okay, great. Because I was thinking that would be like the press. We'd kind of like to see that. Do you understand what I mean? Like it would be good for the press to have access. And I know there are people that are just simply curious that they want to see what jobs are out, but they might not necessarily be looking at that moment. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So why
Yeah, totally
yeah, okay. Okay. I'm guessing from the numbers that you gave earlier that since the new law, there must have been around 300 to 400 people that have registered looking for jobs. Is that about right?
Yeah, Wendy, I would actually say it's probably more than that. I know a single exercise that was really compensated for job seekers who had limitations, where we went out on the front line with NAU as well to assist. So we were targeting job seekers who had limited access to technology. Right. That exercise alone was around 300. So, wow. Separate and apart from that, it has been more. It has definitely been more that we've registered.
Okay, so I was just working it out on the basis of the averages that you'd said. So, because that's Correct. About a month's worth. In that case, you probably can answer this next question, which is, has there been any cases yet where you have had to follow up, where a Caymanian has applied for a job, but the job has still gone to a work permit holder, and there's been a query about that? Have you handled any of those types of cases yet?
So it's actually a very timely question. As of today, I've had some reports of some concerns, which my compliance team has been up and running for the past month and more. They also played a role with curfew, monitoring curfew with RCIPS and CBC. But as of today, we've received some pouring in. Maybe it was because of also being on the media and sharing our complaints email. But we've received some concerns, which we'll definitely be looking into.
But you can't give us any examples yet of situations where the agency has effectively stepped in and prevented a work permit going to someone when they came unemployed, had applied.
I do know of applications. I'm not sure of the actual number. I don't have that with me, but I am aware of applications that have actually been denied because of the visibility of viable Caymanian candidates.
Right. Okay, great. Also, I think you gave the number actually. To be honest, I had how many jobs on the site, which I think you gave us, didn't you?
I did.
You gave us a little earlier. That was 1,000 or something. I think 1,697. I think you said.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's that one. So the final question is, I just wanted to clarify. You talked about 3,700 and odd work permit applications, and you say that they have all been processed since lockdown. So that's between lockdown and.
Yes, correct. There is. I think it's important to identify in that, though, that we were processing as well applications that were in flight. So it's not an accurate reflection of all that would have been purely submitted post-lockdown.
Okay, so that right, I'm with you. There were already pre-applications, and also just to clarify to make sure I heard you right, all of the boards. So that means the permanent residents here in Cayman Islands status board are now sitting as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's Donna. That is all my questions for work at the minute.
Okay, thank you very much.
I may have some more in a second, but I think that's it.
Okay, we're going to go to Kayla now from the Compass. Kayla, please go ahead.
Hi, I will start off with my questions for work, and then I have some for the panel. The numbers that were given earlier for registrations with the jobs portal and Ready to Work don't seem that high in comparison to the unemployment situation. Is there a sense as to why numbers of registrants wouldn't be higher at this point?
Hi, Kayla. Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that there has been an increase as of May 1st. Again, one of the driving factors of that is we did roll out registrations early on in the year. But one of the main factors to take into consideration at this point was that as of the 1st of May, there was a guarantee that all jobs would have in fact be registered on the portal. So we've definitely seen a major increase as of the 1st of May that reflected that change in law.
Okay, and we've heard some feedback that the portal is a bit difficult to navigate. Are there any improvements there, or you know, what has been the feedback that you've received in terms of user friendliness?
Okay, Kayla, I'll turn it over to Kyle to assist with that answer.
Good afternoon, Kayla. Yes, we do recognize that there are some challenges accessing the site, and not so much accessing the site, but rather navigating through the site. And we have received a lot of feedback, and what we have been notifying the public of is we have a lot of information that is available on our website, which is work.ky, worc.ky, and there's a lot of information on there. However, in addition to that, we also have our customer care team that is standing by, and they will assist persons who are unable to navigate the site or unable to access the site, due to restrictions, if they're not able to have internet access, or if there's some restriction with their phones or something like that. So what I would say is that we do recognize that there are challenges from that standpoint. So what we're doing currently, and what we've always been doing, is servicing our clients via email, via WhatsApp, via telephone, and also prior to the shelter in place, we were definitely dealing with people face to face. Since the shelter in place, we've had a tremendous amount of calls and a tremendous amount of inquiries as to how to get on and everything like that. And basically, what I will do is go ahead and continue to provide you with the numbers, and the phone numbers that people can call if they need assistance. I know sometimes there are challenges with people not having credit and various things like that. So we do have a 1-800 number that is toll free. And I'll go ahead and give that number. It's 1-800-534-9672. The other numbers that we can provide you with is our number for WhatsApp if a person needs assistance or we can point them in the right direction. That number is 925-7199. And then additionally, if you need assistance with other things, we can also facilitate that through our email, which is work@gov.ky. Now, I know that's quite a bit of information, but what I wanted to just illustrate there is that we do have a number of different ways that you can interact with us, because we do recognize that the public have, there are various challenges during this time. Now, in addition to that, what we are doing in terms of the looking just shortly into the future, is that we're also looking into a new user interface. This user interface, what we're planning is, or what we're hoping for, is that this will change the way in which the customer interacts with the system and will allow the customer to navigate things much easier. So we are actively going through that process right now, and we are hoping that that will be launched in the very near future. And so that'll be another way that we will be addressing this issue. But as I said before, the first instance for our clients, for the listening public, is to visit our website. We do have a wealth of resources on there where we have how-to guides. We have frequently asked questions. We have a number of different tools that are on there. And then second to that, if you are having any issues navigating it, then please feel free to contact us. We will try our best to walk you through those steps. And then from there, what we can do then is to ensure that you, whether it's an employer getting registered and putting an ad on the portal, or if it's a job seeker, registering for a job, then we can definitely try to get that person through that process.
Okay. Do the registrations to date match the expectations given the unemployment situation that we know is affecting the country? And if not, how do we get those job applicants to registered and better connected with the system?
My apologies. Could you repeat that for us, please?
Yeah, no problem. Do the registration numbers with work and ready to work to date match the expectations given the employment situation that we know is affecting Cayman? Or is there a sense that there are job seekers out there who haven't been able to get connected with the system?
What I would say is that we do expect that, the Cayman, the listening public, we want to encourage everyone to try to get on. We know that there's a dire need out there. We know that there's a significant amount of unemployment due to the current conditions. And we know that the downturn in the economy and everything like that has affected people in so many different ways. We have a significant amount of inquiries, and we have a lot of people who have come through and said that they want to be registered, and we are there actively waiting, wanting to work with them and everything like that. But what we want to ensure is that the public knows that, the portal is available and that they can get on there to register. So the numbers may seem a little bit lower than what you might expect. However, there is a significant amount of people who have joined and who have come on to the portal in the last few months. So we have seen a significant uptick in the numbers that we originally had.
Okay. And for those who have expired work permits at this time, what provisions have been made for them? And do we have a sense of if there is a significant number of outstanding or expired work permits at this time?
Hi, Kayla. Yeah, I think it's actually fair to say that there are quite a few. I mean, we're talking about, if we also look at canceled work permits, we were close to about 1,500 cancellations within the period of April to current. and there are a lot of expired work permits, but I think it's important to identify that at this point, we have provided for persons with expired work permits that in fact are, waiting for renewals or we're waiting for opportunities to submit renewals with the, or for the employers to submit renewals. We have to appreciate that we've given them until the end of the month. So, we're actually seeing quite a large volume of submissions now that deadline is actually coming up. And we are closely monitoring those expired work permits and comparing them till the end of the month. So hence the reason why we're trying to get out there in the media, get the information out there, that if in fact the workers or the employer in fact has the workers still employed under the transition amendments that allow them to continue, that will not really change until we are able to kind of look at that as of the ending of this month. But we are definitely with our compliance team as well, paying very close attention to that. We know that we've had some calls in relation to, with businesses or agencies that are just kind of getting back on their feet and they've been managing clientele, who are waiting on them to make these submissions and so forth. One of the information that we wanted to pass out there is, we want them to get the submissions in as quick as they can. If they fall outside of the criteria, for that communication to be had with us to enable us to try to assist businesses to get themselves back on their feet, get workers back on their feet as well. But again, under the premise that it's still being conducted in alignment with the new provisions, which is advertising on the portal. Okay. And we're hearing that quite a few work permits are coming back as deferred. Can you elaborate on that situation? I can. So early on, with the shelter in place and government closures, there was a lot of uncertainty around what the future really held for the people of these islands and I think the world around. So there were policy steers to mitigate exactly what we were talking about previously, the concern that there may have been workers here unemployed, they couldn't leave, what to really do with that, the jobs, the businesses were closing down. So there was a safety measure that was taken from a policy steer that guided administrators to make decisions to defer. So we do have a number of deferrals that were still pending, but as of last week, we've taken an action plan in addressing those deferrals and treated that as a special project because I think it's fair to say at this point in time, the economy is getting back on its feet. Businesses are reopening now. So we have taken the proactive measures to get those applications processed in a timely manner. Okay. I have lots of other questions for work, but I'll move on to the Premier and Governor and so the other reporters get some time to ask their questions. I wanted to touch on the Premier and the Governor's comments from earlier about the good job that's been done thus far. And, the Governor described Cayman as being in a safe bubble right now. But we know that many countries that have relaxed measures and opened up have faced an uptick of COVID-19 cases. Are we anticipating a second wave here? And are we prepared for a situation in which Cayman might face mass infections of COVID-19?
Well, the first thing I'd say is we never had a first wave. We can hardly describe 193 cases as a wave, and we've managed those incredibly well. The reason why we have been so cautious, some will say overly so, and why we are still being very cautious despite the very good results, is because we are determined to avoid the possibility of significant outbreaks which force us back into a shutdown again. for many of the countries that are struggling with this, they shut down too late and reopen too early. And those are some of the lessons that we have learned. And that's why we are still being very cautious, particularly with respect to mass gatherings of persons through the end of August, end of July and into early August, because we are still conscious that while the virus is still present, there is always that possibility that it might take off again.
And Premier, you had mentioned in the previous press conference that if everything goes to plan, we're still aiming for that September 1st reopening for international travel. And when we look to our neighbors, they're not necessarily doing well and probably won't be doing too well by September. How do we navigate that when there is still increasing cases in, for example, the United States, one of the main tourist markets for our island?
The way you would handle a sea urchin, very carefully. The thing is that this is a moving, or the date is a moving target. We have to fix a date, and we have to have something to work towards. And so we're working towards the 1st of September. But as you just pointed out, the way that this pandemic is being managed in other countries is not doing us a great deal of favors. I mean, it is now looking like Florida is going to be the new epicenter of the virus in North America. And of course, we'd like to joke that, Miami is a suburb of Cayman, so that's the place that we go to for just about everything, the place we jump off from to go to most places in the world. So we are still actively researching, looking at what's available in terms of quick testing and safe means to bring people back here as tourists, and not have to detain them for a couple of weeks while we determine their COVID-19 status. That's not going to work as part of a tourist welcoming plan. So, I wish I had answers, but nobody in the world does, quite frankly, at this stage. We are still looking at every possible angle, researching every possible lead we get as to how we can safely reopen. But as I've said from way back, as long as the virus is raging around us, it is going to be very, very difficult to open the borders to regular tourist traffic. We do believe that we can, with proper planning, reopen to persons who have homes here, like second homes here, and who want to come back. We're certain we can manage that sort of a situation and that sort of risk. But commercial traffic, much more difficult because of the sheer number of people that we're talking about. And so far, the unavailability of reliable, quick testing as a means of reducing or managing the risk, because you don't eliminate it. But we're working on all of those angles, and now that we have we believe the local epidemic, under control, government can throw more of its resources on trying to find a way through this, because we can't keep the borders locked down forever. Otherwise, we'll starve to death in the process.
And I just have one last question before I let you go. You mentioned earlier, Premier, that we are now in hurricane season. How likely is it that Cayman would be able to organize evacuation flights if a storm comes our way in coming months, given the current air travel situation?
Well, we've become experts at evacuation flights, subject only to being able to get the people to the places they need to get to. But we'd certainly be able to get into the United States, get to the UK, Some other places are not so willing to accept persons in the present situation. So I think we're all privy and painfully aware of how hard it's been and how hard it still is to get nationals returned to many of the countries because of concerns still about the COVID-19 virus. So, but in terms of our ability to mobilize, we can do that. It's the other bit that proves more difficult, getting acceptance of the flights by the countries we're trying to get the people to.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. We're going to go now to Radio Cayman's April Cummings. April?
Thank you very much, Donna. This first question sort of follows up on what the Premier was just speaking about. We seem to be relying quite heavily, for example, on the construction industry to help us get through this period of time. But as you've mentioned, if the borders are closed and we rely heavily on external traffic for purchasing those properties, and those transactions fund not just the people of the industry, but also government as well, we could run out of people to sell things to if we don't find a solution to this pretty soon. Am I seeing that correctly?
Well, I don't know. I mean, people can still send money here to buy the places. I think the key thing is that all indications are there's still tremendous interest in owning a little piece of this rock, a place here. And that, I think, is what has given developers and contractors the confidence that you're seeing demonstrated by them having so anxiously gone back to work on these projects. I think the bigger issue for us is how we fill the hotels and condominiums which are empty and which would normally be filled by tourists. That, I think, is really the bigger issue.
Thank you, sir. The other question is a bit different, but as I was listening to the folks from work speaking, as I recall, the job advertisements that traditionally were required for the newspaper, which are now as part of the portal, provided a significant amount of funds over the years to keep the journalistic enterprise alive. With those funds gone, in your view, is there a risk that we won't have an external independent media entity able to self-fund itself?
Well, it's not gone. There's no prohibition against advertising in any media jobs. It's just that the mandatory requirement is that you must do so on this portal. I do hope that it wasn't principally advertisements for jobs that kept media houses going. I mean, the great deal of challenges to the printed media. I think we're all aware of that, and there are many who don't believe it'll be around in a few more years. I'm not that I'm an expert at that at all, but perhaps because I love print, I tend to have a more optimistic view that it will survive, albeit with significant changes. We see what's happened at the Compass, but that's the same, right across the developed world. But I really do hope that it wasn't sheer reliance on job advertisements that have kept media houses operating all these years.
That said, we've already seen the demise of, for example, Cayman 27. So, and I'm not casting judgment necessarily. My question is really just around a concern that independent media in a market this size clearly struggles, and that was a big chunk of their revenue. And I can't see most companies, unless they're just wonderful human beings, spending money when they don't have to for something. So I just was curious about your thoughts about that. Based on the premise that having media is important in the country just to keep us all accountable.
Yes, and of course, any media that is reliant on government to survive is really non-independent media. So I think we got to bear that in mind. I mean, Cayman 27 survived, quite frankly, for years because they just didn't pay the regulatory fees and so forth that they were required to pay. I think that a way has to be found. I mean, of course, the easy thing is for say government step in and subsidize these places, but then of course you lose your independence, or at least the perception is that you lose your independence. So I think that, I mean, Cayman is big enough, wealthy enough now to support media. I just think more innovative means have to be found to ensure that it can be funded by consumers. I don't think that's something that government can fix without, of course, it being perceived that the government is controlling the media.
Thank you very much for that. I just was interested kind of, in how you saw the situation, being as it is an important role.
Okay, April, is that it for your questions? We're going to go now back to Wendy from CNS. Wendy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Donna. I just wanted to follow up on one question, which I think is really going to be for Mr. Scott. Is there anyone at work that's actually doing the matching up between job seekers and jobs that are coming onto the portal? Or is it entirely down to the job seekers to do their own looking?
Hi, Wendy. Really good question. I think I can answer that twofold. One, the system in itself allows independent job seekers to actually see the jobs that are posted and apply for them. On the back end, the administrators or boards are able to identify that there had been a Caymanian who had applied for that post. But in addition to that, at times, an administrator or the boards will lean on employment service officers as well, who may in fact have some of those candidates as clientele. So there's a variety of interaction and dependencies that come out of that relationship.
Okay, so there is, if you, those that are seeking help can ask for it, and they will get assistance to be matched up to existing jobs.
That's correct. I mean, there are other categories. So you can be an independent job seeker, a job seeker plus, and have as a job seeker plus that provides you with additional support from employment service officers and job seeker extended. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay, you're welcome. We're going to go back to Caymanian Times, Ralph Lewis, for a final question. Ralph, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the panel and members of work. Thank you for your presentations. I just want a quick comment for the Premier, and then I'll go to Mr. Scott. I thank April for bringing up that question a short while ago. And it's a topic I didn't want to really address, but just to make a comment that timing is everything. And I understand technology and the need to help Caymanians find jobs. But certain changes need to be timed so it doesn't affect the private sector. And as one of the owners of a media company, in a crisis, it's rather challenging to find other sources of revenue when no one has a business to run. So the timing of the changes sort of put a damper on the efforts of the private sector, in this case, our business, to operate. However, I do believe that there is a way of getting things done. And we're already looking to strategies on how we could reinvent the wheel or diversify our revenue sources to make sure that free media is in Cayman, whether in print or online. And I'm sure in a couple of weeks, you'll hear some plans coming up. But just to say that that's something I wanted to comment on. I'll go to Mr. Scott.
Ralph, just a moment.
Yes, go right ahead. Yeah.
The Premier didn't bite on that, but I just wanted to say, and maybe I'm throwing things out there, but I still see people, companies advertising in print. As I love print myself. Well, I wondered, I don't think that there's a merit system in terms of employers who go the extra mile in trying to ensure that they hire a Caymanian, not only on the portal, but if they also advertise in print also, if they would get any merit for that. So that was something as I heard the discussion, is something that we could probably look at in terms of or have a discussion around in employers who go the extra mile, ensuring that they find Caymanians, put it in different medias and print, etc. I thought would be a good way of still keeping some of this business going and alive. Just a thought.
I
Not a policy.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. And yes, we could talk all afternoon on this, but I'm aware of the listening public, and they want to hear something more about work. Mr. Scott, thank you for your presentation. A number of the questions were answered. We've heard the Dr. Lee say that the HSA has done a wonderful job. We've heard the Premier applaud his staff, and I'm sure the Governor would agree as well. It sounds like we have a lot of talented and hardworking Caymanians in our workforce. And the challenges of finding jobs for these people seem to be something that is not happening, and it's just so difficult. So my question to you, if you can tell me, what are some of the challenges you think that will exist in trying to really find jobs for Caymanians? You know, now we've launched a website, a portal, and we're trying to train up Caymanians for the roles. Yes, what are the challenges you see coming forward that will allow those Caymanians to really get jobs?
Yeah, Ralph. Hi. Thanks for that question. I think it's important to identify that we are. I would definitely say we're on the right track with not only looking at, okay, well, we give them a job seeker an ability to identify a potential job that they're suited for automatically. So that's one pathway. But what we are doing, and I think Diane touched on that, is that we're actually looking at other pathways that may, in fact, have to be explored and utilized, such as TVET programs, training, partnerships with private sectors. Also looking at the demographics and cross sections of labor demands generally. I know one of the areas that myself and Diane was speaking on earlier was preparing job seekers for the reopening of the tourism sector and service industries, restaurants, etc. But having those programs in place that would, in fact, provide them with the immediate certification and capabilities that they would not find as a rejection or a reason for rejection, in that they have the basic criteria and basic training to enable them to enter those pathways of employment.
A very good point too. I do believe that the opportunity exists for people to find jobs. I arrived here 20 odd years ago, and there was no unemployment. And I believe that what made it work was that everyone was working together, not just the government was doing it, but we had the whole community and all the businesses coming together to ensure that Caymanians had jobs. Now, we have to ensure that those players in the private sector are still around to make it happen. And the point I'm making is that media is so key in this whole country, and when things are done, that we have to ensure that we're all connected to make this thing work out. So I think the solution to ensure that all Caymanians have jobs includes not only private sector companies and the government, but also the media. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that the media needs to stay around and will stay around. And Donna, that's it for me for this afternoon. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Ralph. Thank you, of course, to the public for joining us for today's press briefing, to our esteemed panel. A reminder to go online to gov.ky/coronavirus for the latest information. We hope, of course, that you'll join us again next Tuesday. Until then, we wish you a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there and to those in the room. For those of you watching, we'll leave you now with an update on regional and world statistics on the coronavirus.